For our last session of the day, before we get into the presenter, though, Carl and I want to give away some gift cards. So you don't actually have to be present to win, but we're going to draw out of 8 who completed 100% of the passports. So 3 of 8 for your odds, and that will be for a $50 gift certificate. All right, the first winner of a $50 Visa gift card, Stacy Fatua.
Oh, wow.
And our second winner of a $50 Visa gift card is Scotty, is it Merkel?
There you go. Nicely done.
Yeah, Scotty put in some pretty serious work. He was hustling to get his signatures twice because he lost his first passport and then just filled out a second one. All right, the last one for $50. There it is. Sunshine Romania. Alrighty, and now we have, there are 2 people that turned in passports that have 7 signatures, and so we will draw one of these 2 to win a $20 Visa gift card. Joe Warner. Oh yeah, Joe just left, so.
Oh my gosh, who's that mean, right?
Alrighty, that's our winner. Thanks for participating, everybody. We really appreciate everyone's involvement in our networking opportunities. Thanks, guys.
Done.
So we will get started in about 4 minutes, so we'll give people some time to get back.
Good morning. Did you write it? You all right?
I know. I just stood up and I was like, you want to stand up? Last night I was like, oh. You just have to zoom about every 2 minutes. You have to click the zoom out a little bit. No, that's other than follow her, like the panel who's following her.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I know, check it out. Yeah, I'm not getting you and next year you get to stay around for the so you get sworn in. What was that?
I like to use that.
Am I sharing? Yeah. Hello.
Hi, I'm just kind of passively participating,
Good.
Not a bad way to do it.
learning by observation.
How do you like it so far?
Well, I'm doing better than I did in my biochemistry class, taking the approach here. So they didn't have a passport though in biochem. So
They didn't care like we do.
no, that's a good point.
Gives me a flashback to my oldest boy. Freshman year of college, he came up bioengineering and chemistry. They put him in a 300 level class freshman year, first semester.
You're not getting audio. Sorry. I'm just concerned because they're going to start. Hello. No.
All right, you need to go ahead and get started. As long as-
A lot of them, yes. They'll be on the YouTube and we'll push them out to the social media so that you'll get there on the website. You'll know that they're doing it. There'll be a link.
Okay, so a few quick reminders, please don't walk in front of the camera. We are live streaming to our enterprise membership. Please limit your tabletop conversations. Please also try to limit your Wi-Fi usage for that portion. Wait for me to run the mic or Cecilia or somebody, but we'll have two for this session, so we should be a little bit quicker unless it's me. And then from there, I want to welcome our final keynote speaker of the day, Marty Moore, the Chief Nurse from Medline Industries.
Is it good? Okay, there I am. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And by the way, you could not have picked a more gorgeous setting than this here. So went up to Depot Bay last night to see Hay. Love that place from it. So I actually, just a little bit of background. I grew up in Oregon, a little tiny town north of Portland called Plattsmouth, Oregon. If you've been there, there's one stoplight, and you blink and you're through it. So grew up on a farm, but I was very blessed actually to work with Evan. I was the chief nursing officer at Providence St. Vincent Medical Center in Portland, Oregon for 7 years, and then was recruited and actually into my role right now that I have with Medline. Part of my role is that I work across the nation. And not only do I work across the nation, I work with acute care, and I work with what I call community caring, which is where we're going in healthcare. So I want to kind of give you a little moment to kind of peek in and see. The other part of what I do is I work with venture capitalists. Yeah, I never thought in my lifetime as a nurse, I would say I work with VCs. But I do, and I want to share with you what's happening on that front. I also work with policymakers. I just actually flew back from Washington, D.C. yesterday. And earlier I was talking with Evan, and I could not remember what this is called. I've been a nurse for 35 years. That's called jet lag, right? So I was like, and I'm pointing at him, he goes, shoulder. And then he looks at me like, are you okay? Yeah, we can do this, all right. So let's kind of look at what is the data telling us. And, this is fascinating because if you look and think about the fact that there was 1,566 mergers and acquisitions. Many of you have probably felt that, watched it, or experienced it. I'm going to share with you in my career, I've had the opportunity to do the due diligence of 3 acquisitions where I went in and looked at the proof of practice within hospitals to determine kind of where they were at in comparison to where the system was at that they were joining. We have really and truthfully consolidated. Advisory board, what was it, probably about 8 years ago, said, and did this prediction maybe 7 years ago, there'll be 150 systems across America. We're rapidly going there. Now, what's interesting is the latest trend is called beating scale. Those are the organizations that have not been acquired, they're not merged, and they're figuring out how they're going to survive by being scale. Because the theory has been is that when you merge, right, you actually have more capabilities, more leverage, more capital abilities. Certainly, when you look at IT platforms, you think about that as well. But there are systems out there, and there's smaller hospitals or smaller systems that are figuring out how they're going to do this and how they're going to be able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive and not be a part of these statistics. I find that actually fascinating. I'm going to talk about venture capitalists. Last year, they contributed about $1.27 billion into healthcare. That's a lot of money. How many of you believe that healthcare really and truly is an economic driver? Y'all should be raising your hands. It is an economic driver. And it's one of the things I want to talk about today because I want for you to start to revision kind of why healthcare is an economic driver and what's going to look like in the future. When you look at disruption, 65% of our CEOs across the nation have said absolutely they're willing to be disruptors in what is a very disrupting time. I don't know, does anybody read Becker's Daily? If you don't, I encourage you to, but I'm going to tell you, I love Kaiser Family Foundation. I also love Health Affairs Today. And you start to watch some of the trends that are happening there. Remember, I talked about the fact that healthcare is an economic driver within the U.S. market, absolutely is. You start to then look at some of the trends that are occurring out there and what's happening, and you start to see what they're pulling into their news feeds, and that takes you then to what is it that's going to be barriers, and that's the statistic that's here, that 64% saying it's culture. That is the biggest barrier to change. Now, I want for you for a second to think about the fact that culture is what we say and do on a daily basis. What are the conversations that we're having? Because that's our culture. And many times, the conversations that we're having are more of an influencer than our strategic plan. And so for you to be thinking about how it is that culture can change has to be the language and the conversations and the discussion that we're having on a daily basis. And if culture is the largest barrier that we have, and for us to transform, then we got to be having some really different conversations. So let's talk about that. Here's one of the insights, and this was done by a study of CEOs across the nation, and said of healthcare systems, said companies all around us, in and out of healthcare, are developing replacements for hospitals and health systems. They're not here to help us. They're here to be us. Now, I want to share with you that when I was running hospitals, and I would hear that, I would be like, oh, I've heard that forever, right? And I was like, guys, they don't know our business. We save lives. I've been a nurse for almost 35 years. I save lives, that's what we do. Yeah, I'm going to tell you more so in my career than I've ever felt in my lifetime. And by the way, I became a nurse in 1984 when the DRGs hit. Anybody remember that? Don't raise your hand. Oh, thank you. There's somebody else like, I remember that. We thought the end of the world was happening when DRGs came on the scene. I would love to just have DRGs now. Really and truthfully. They're here to be us. Why is that? Because there's money in healthcare. And I never thought as a nurse that I would be standing on the stage saying that. But I want to help you to kind of understand where the money's going and where we need to be thinking about as healthcare leaders. Now, these same CEOs said, here's the words, the magic words about what is going to innovate our hospital and health systems. And I would tell you probably every system or health or hospital that you work for is looking at alternative revenue streams. If they haven't, they will. That is what's happening across the nation. They're looking at innovation. They're trying to come up with different ways that they can either become a part of ongoing alternative revenue streams, or they're trying to partner up with people. And you hear things like, you know, you have to be comfortable and competent and learn the lines between what used to be traditional business sectors. You have to think about non-traditional healthcare business and pursue those solutions. You've got to run two models and, oh boy, do you not know this one? You have to run two models, one in volume, one in value. Does that not just feel like the most interesting conversation you've ever had in your lifetime? I remember a CFO that I used to work for, and he said to me, Marty, volume kills all things. And I bought into that, man. I used to love flu season. Why did I love flu season? Because it gave me the cushion that I need for my budget for when census dropped down. Because my productivity was in 135, 142%, and I loved it. Now, the nurses didn't love it because they were like crazy busy and it was all insanity at the time. But I loved it because I needed that cushion to offset when census would drop down. That's how we used to do it, right? Volume. But now there's been this flip, and I'm going to talk about what value means. And it is about value payment. And also what's happening beyond acute care. And boy, the runway for them has been short. So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And then, as we look about being willing to lead what the data is saying about what our consumers, I want you to change that instead of patients. And hang on to that for a second. And then what our needs dictate. And they go on to talk about, you've got to be willing to accept the change. It's going to be difficult, but necessary. You have to be genuine, look for genuine opportunities and be comfortable and re-examine and embrace and build. Are those words that you've heard before? But those are the conversations that are happening. But with that then, there's this subtlety. There's this stream that's going underneath. And that's meanwhile back at CMS. It's interesting, Governor Levitt was the governor of Utah. He also was the secretary for the Department of Health and Human Sciences. And, I heard him speak, and I had the opportunity to meet him. And by the way, if you have not followed, he has a nonprofit organization that's a coalition of accountable care organizations. They're doing some pretty phenomenal work and well worth looking at because there's new models that are emerging out of that. But he got up on stage and he said, we're in the 25th year of a 40-year plan. Let me say that again. We're in the 25th year of a 40-year plan. And I'm looking at him like, what? Because I don't know about you, but I always feel like it's a surprise when suddenly we have new regulations that hit us, and it's kind of like the flavor of whatever back in Washington, D.C. But in reality, when I had a chance to really study this and research it and look at it, he's right. There has been a long-term strategy. And I want to go into the strategy that CMS has because it's very important for you as healthcare leaders to understand it. CMS will actually keep doing their thing as everything else changes. I was meeting with legislators on Tuesday or Wednesday, and we were talking about Title VIII appropriations. And we're looking and speaking about the fact that we all know there's a nursing shortage. But one of the things we have to understand is in our care settings beyond acute care hospitals, some of those care settings are running 57% turnover rates. They're just stealing from each other. And meanwhile, our society is aging, and so the supply and demand is getting bigger and bigger. And so we're talking about not only do we have to have people to care for this aging population, but we have to have new models. And we have to be thinking about how we do these new models differently. And one of the legislators that I met with said, "You know the strategic plan, do you?" I said, "Yes, I do." Remember he said, we're in the 25th year of a 40-year plan. So let's look at the strategic plan. If you haven't seen this, I would encourage you. You've heard of it. I guarantee you, you absolutely lived some of it. But there's more coming. Their 3 A's is better care, smarter spending, healthier people, healthier communities. Now, healthy people, healthy communities has been on the docket for a long time. As a matter of fact, back in 1988, I actually was part of a conversation about how we can care for our communities. I was part of a focus group. That was back in 1988. Thank you. I thought it was my eyes, but I did not understand and disclose to you that that looked blurry to me. Because earlier, I cannot remember shoulder. So it was like, okay, I'm a little jet lagged, I got that, so thank you so much. All right, so when we look at better care, smarter spending, healthier people, healthier communities, that's their aim. That aim's not new. That aim's been out there, but they're very quiet about it. And here's one of the things that you have to think about is when you look at all the goals that are out there, we have a tendency to live in goal 1. And goal 1 is the one that all of us are thinking about. That is our value-based purchasing. That is reduction of hospital-acquired infections. Rightfully so. If you look at the cost of septicemia, you'll start to understand why urinary tract infections, bloodstream infections, pneumonia, surgical site infections. It is billions and billions and billions of dollars to our healthcare system. And fundamentally, our leaders do not believe it should be happening. And folks, we have work to do on that. We have come a long ways. Part of my work and part of my vision is really thinking about the fact that what I call human-centered design. Human-centered design is that you really look at how people practice, and you take the evidence, and then you design that into the tools or the products or whatever they're doing, because no one is looking at policies. No one has time. You have to design the behaviors to match the workflow to get the outcomes that you want. That's part of the work that I do. That's actually one of the reasons I love Providence. Because it's like, oh, so we gotta do this differently. We have to think differently. So we spend so much time here, but I want you to put a little star by this, because I'm coming back to it, because the government looks at it differently. All right, and then we look at goal 2. And goal 2 is strengthening person and family engagement as partners in healthcare. Now, if I were to talk to any of your colleagues that you work alongside, they would say, we do that, right? My background was pediatrics. I was a pediatric intensive care nurse. I was a peds flight nurse. I've always believed in partnership. I trained and brought in the principles and standards of patient and family from the Patient and Family Institute. So I believe in partnerships. But I'm going to tell you how our federal government is looking at this. It's not how we as healthcare providers look at it. We look at it as I have knowledge, I share with you. They are looking at it as, nope, they're engaged and they own their own health care. What are your health systems doing to ensure that the people you serve are engaged and they own their own health care? I would encourage you to type in some sort of disease that you don't want, and you will see Cleveland Clinic and Mayo come up. Many of you probably have put in and looked at the Mayo website to learn information about some disease that you don't want, right? Why do you think that system's doing that? Goal 2. When you look at strengthening person and family engagement as partners in their healthcare, they are starting now to really plant the seeds that we are your partners in healthcare, because healthcare is now global. Healthcare now moves. When you think about the objectives of self-management, they have put dollars to consumers being keepers of their health care. Why is that? Because we'll question the tests. We'll question the treatments. We'll seek out second opinions. It's interesting, really and truthfully, the financial statistics that are behind this. So you have to look at and think about how is it that your system, what can you do with the roles that you have to really help promote that your health system, your health delivery system is working towards partners in engagement, not passive. Not we hold knowledge, will tell you, but really and truthfully partners. I would encourage you to take a look at some of the leading systems out there. When you type in those diseases, see what pops up and see how they take you in and see how the language that they use. Remember, culture is what we say you do on a daily basis. Are you thinking about and looking at this? Now, quality strategic goal 3 is really interesting because most of us have spent our time on reducing emissions and re-emissions. Why? There's penalties. Federal government said, we do not believe people bouncing back with certain disease conditions, really and truthfully, you should be paid for that. It's inefficient care, and then sometimes it's actually was a lack of care. Now, what I want to highlight to you though is that they're really looking at, can you enable effective healthcare system navigation? A lot of organizations have brought on positions called nurse navigators to kind of help people. Do you think venture capitalists are investing in nurse navigators? No. How many of you have apps on your phone? Everybody does. Unless you're like my brother has a flip phone. He's like a diehard. And what's really fun is, those phones are coming back. They're like retro cool. And I told him, I said, hey, you're cool, Clarence. And he goes, no, I just can't stand the other ones. You know from it, right? So how many of you use your apps all the time? That's what's happening. We are trained, and our behavior is such that we are trained to use apps. And if you think about healthcare navigation, look and see who's got apps out there. There are companies that are now being developed that literally you download their app and they will drive you into the best place to get care, and some of them are not hospital systems. That's what's happening. And additionally, when you look at the quality strategic goals, one of the things that CMS is thinking about is how is it that we can help you get to the lowest cost, highest quality, remember what their 3 goals are: healthy people, healthy community, access. So, when we think about goal 4, and we look at promoting effective prevention and treatment of chronic disease, we're doing the screening and prevention. We're not paid for it, I get it. We've been doing that for a long time. We look at prevention of heart attacks and strokes fast. We're coming up on Stroke Awareness Month. But when you look at improving quality of care for people with multiple chronic conditions, I want you to go start by that because I'm going to come back to it. We're also looking at behavioral health, and there's some new models that are emerging. I know in Oregon, especially in Providence or in Portland, you guys have done some really innovative models around behavioral health. This is a national crisis, one that has hit the radar screen of legislators, one that's hit the radar screen of the budgeting, the Congressional Budgeting Office. This is a national crisis, and so they're looking at behavioral health. And then also perinatal outcomes, maternal child. And when you take a look at our statistics, comparative to either developed nations and actually some undeveloped nations, our outcomes are significantly lower than where they should be compared to other nations. And so they're looking at perinatal outcomes. When we look at goal 5, communities to promote best practices of healthy living, just stop for a second and think about that. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare are talking about communities. Do we, in our strategic planning of health systems, speak in terms of communities or as hospitals? You see the dichotomy there? Remember, culture is what you say and do on a daily basis. If you're speaking about bricks and mortar of acute care settings, you need to take a step back and think for a moment. How are we best positioning our healthcare system to be moving into communities of care? Who are our partners? What models are emerging out there? How can we be a part of it? If you have not been watching, I would encourage you to be watching federally funded healthcare centers. There are millions and millions of dollars being dispersed across the United States for federally funded healthcare centers, moving care into the communities. Absolutely moving care into the communities. One of the things that they're really looking at is the best practices of healthy living. Remember we talked about self-management, we talked about engagement, we talked about reduction of negative outcomes associated with hospital-acquired infections. You see the shift that's starting to happen here about what is it that we can do to really move care out. Now for you, that creates some interesting challenges because your whole revenue cycle is built on disease and illness, correct? And so for you, it's a chance to start thinking about how is it that there is funding, remember alternative revenue sources, that you can bring in to your organization in partnership and in alignment with where the strategic goals are going. Lastly, when we look at goal 6, we think about payment systems that reward value over volume. That is not new to you. That is not new at all. Some of you may have seen the statistics that show that the fee, for service model is going away, and it will all be value. Let me share what's happening to our colleagues that are in community caring. So when I talk about community caring settings, I'm talking about skilled nursing facilities. I'm talking about long-term care. I'm talking about rehab hospitals, those kinds. So suddenly, we've had a long runway for us on the acute care side to be able to adjust ourselves and to understand how we go from a fee-for-service, which was volume-based, to value, correct? HCAPS came along when we started to learn that we actually needed to listen and that there were things that people weren't happy with us about. The runway for our colleagues on the community caring side has been about 2 to 3 years. They suddenly have 5-star ratings. They are now being looked at for their outcomes and their quality capabilities, and they've had to adjust very quickly. I project my thoughts is that the acute care was used as kind of the model and the testing, and it's all going to come together. That's why when we look at one of the goals of value over volume, absolutely Medicaid and Medicare is going to bring it all together. It's going to be on value. Volume will not matter. Now, getting there is going to be incredibly messy. And if you're somebody like me who likes things in nice, neat little packages, it's going to be uncomfortable. But for you, you have to be thinking about how do you help your system in the goals that you have to be able to migrate themselves over to really be able to look at alternative revenue streams that are based on value, that are based on community, that are based on engagement and self-management of those you serve. That's really fascinating to start to think about that. And that leads us then to looking at things with a very different lens, an incredibly different lens. I have the opportunity to travel, and when I am able to see things that just blow my mind, I always have to share stories. So if you'll indulge me for a second, I want to share a story with you. And in Florida, there's a community called Medical City. In Medical City, there are homes that are being built, that are just amazing. The flooring is designed in such a way that it analyzes my gait every day. Because what we know about falls, by the way, falls are an $18 billion cost to our federal government. $18 billion. Do you think they're investing in innovation that's going to reduce falls? Yes, they are. So the flooring is designed in such a way that it analyzes my gait, and if it starts to notice that I'm having a left-sided weakness. So my gait is off a little bit. I'm kind of balancing here. What we know about falls, by the way, now is about gait and balance. Gait and balance. So it's analyzing that data points. It has a toilet. This actually was a little like, I don't know about this, but it's a toilet that has a stick that comes out every morning. Analyzes your bodily fluids. Looks to say you're a little hydrated, dehydrated yesterday, you need to be doing the following. If you're pregnant, it's analyzing for are you still insured. It's long before your doctor picks up on it. All that data is going into predictive algorithms, artificial intelligence, right? And then you go in and there's this tray. This tray has your medications. And the medications, it knows exactly how many, based on the weight, based on when you pick it up, what time you should be picking it up. And it knows exactly whether you took your meds or you didn't take your meds, and it reorders for you so that you don't run out of your medications. And then as you're standing in front of the mirror, this one also freaked me out. Your physician comes up and says, "Good morning, Marty." I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have my makeup on, okay? This is not a good day, right? And the physician says, now, by the way, this is not him. It's all computerized. Based on the data that has been submitted from such and such and such and such, we're going to work on hydrating today. By the way, I want you to do the following core strengthening exercises. Because we noticed in the last week that you're a little bit left-sided weakness. Does that feel weird to you? Yeah. Yeah, that is what's happening. I told you I hang out with venture capitalists. Not a lot of them, but a couple of them. They don't think like we do, by any means at all. It was probably halfway through the dinner that I realized that he was sucking all the intellectual property out of my brain. And I'm like, wait a minute here. I'm giving you great ideas, right? There's a disc that's going to hit the market, probably it's in the FDA right now. And by the way, whether you like the FDA or not, they are really slow. You would be amazed what's in the pipeline. I had a patent that just was approved for a scale of congestive heart failure. I designed it in such a way because one of the things I watched is that somebody with congestive heart failure, we tell them to watch their numbers. They don't understand numbers. Anybody have parents with congestive heart failure that you're dealing with? If you do, and they're being told to watch their numbers, they don't understand the numbers. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make a simple chart. I want you to do green, yellow, red. And then I want you to put the parameters that the doctor wants to keep their weight in up on there. If their weight is in such and such and it's in the green, that's where they write it. They start to go to the yellow, that's where they write it, and you tell them what they need to be doing in the yellow. Usually it's a diuretic or whatever, because you want to move them back to the green. If they're in the red, they call their doctor immediately that day. The scale that I designed does exactly that, and it shows and it auditorily says, here's your number, you're in the red. Or somebody has visual impairment. Here's your number, you're in the yellow. Here's your number, you're in the green. We call it the heart saver, is what we called it. It took 5 years to get to the FDA. It's amazing, absolutely amazing what's happening. But there's this disc that's out there. And this disc can be worn, will be worn by children with asthma. It has and demonstrated the prediction of somebody that's having asthmatic symptoms before physically noted or auditory or noted with the stethoscope. That disc goes to an app. Goes to the app of the school nurse, goes to the app of mom, goes to the app of dad, goes to the app of whoever. That says, Marty's starting to have bronchial strictures. She's starting to have to work a little harder to breathe, even before Marty knows that. Time for an inhaler. Mom, before I'm doing that. What's the number one admission into emergency departments? Asthma. Status asthmaticus, number one admission down the inpatient side. That's going to hit the market in about a year. About a year. Remember I told you how CMS is wanting healthier people, healthier communities? They were behind it, folks. Venture capitalists took it, but they were supporting it. So I want for you to be thinking about the fact that we've got to look at things with a brand new, very different lens. Because while I'm giving you these examples, I'm going to tell you that across the nation, things are happening that you just go, wow, didn't even think about that. Didn't even look at that. And then on top of that, we have this goal. Remember talking about goal one, which was reduce inappropriate and unnecessary care that can lead to harm. In my head as a clinician, that's reduction of urinary tract infections, that's reduction of bloodstream infections, that's surgical site infections, all those things. Remember I said about saving lives? Well, our federal government actually looks at it from the standpoint of what? Fraud. As a matter of fact, they developed strike force locations, and in 2019, they did expansion of the strike force locations, and that's teams bringing together the efforts of the Inspector General, the Department of Justice, the Department of U.S. Attorneys, the FBI, and the local law enforcement. These are your strike force locations now, coming soon to you. Why are they they're doing that? Because they believe that we have a system where we use testing that we do testing that's unnecessary part of our billing system, or our revenue cycles, right? And many times, actually, when you look at the evidence, we do it out of behavioral practice or just repetitive. And the question is do we really need to be doing the tests that we're doing? And have we done that to really increase revenue through the years? Not consciously. But is it time to relook at this? For you all and the work that you do, boy, folks, keep your eyes on this. There was a point in my career, a point in my life, I was a corporate compliance officer. That's not something I actually say a lot to. And so I developed the corporate compliance plan for the hospital system I worked for. Model then, the plan was picked up and was utilized in the state that I was in at the time. I had the opportunity to work with the Department of Justice. I had the opportunity to work with the FBI. I had the opportunity to really and truthfully talk with these people. There's an old book out there called The Great White Lie. No, License to Steal. Old book. The federal government has taken mathematical geniuses who've developed computerized programs. Remember artificial intelligence and algorithms, predictive modeling? They're way ahead of us on this. And that is what they're utilizing for strike forces. So you know this, that you live and breathe this. I just want to bring to your attention that when they're looking at strategic goals, our intent to do no harm is really based on clinical care. Their intent to do no harm is based on what they feel is unnecessary testing and treatments, running through computerized programs, looking for outliers. And these guys have come together to take a look at and ensure that the dollars that are being expended by CMS are being spent for the right things. That usually causes a breathing moment. All right, so let me take a sip of tea. How many of you have heard about strike force? Were you aware? It's kind of a well-kept secret. It's interesting that these locations are popping up. What they found is that they do better working together than not. Isn't that a novel idea? Now, I mean, if you're on the receiving end of these guys working together, that's not a great idea, right? But on the flip side, they have pooled their resources and they've pooled their data and their jurisdiction, and they're coming. So let's talk a little bit about these strategic plans. And I want for you to walk out of here with tangible actions that you can take back. I'm going to share with you, your clinical leaders are going to say, you do this. I actually can tell you that I have said, you do this. I want to challenge you, we do not. We do not please life. We do not look at how, in truth, that we help those that we serve to self-manage their health care. Because we own bias. And the bias is that we have the knowledge. I remember I was meeting with physicians and one of the docs, and I was promoting the fact that patients and families should be in the room at the time that we do, reports. And I remember one of the physicians looking at me like, they don't need to be there. It's our information. And I just went, whoa, hang on a second. It's their health care. It's their bodies. They walk out the door with their health, or lack thereof, not us. And if I'm lying in that bed, I want to be a part of that conversation. That's what this is all about. Because what we know is that when we promote self-management, we have more conversations about palliative care, less invasive testing. By the way, the research is very clear here about that now. What we know is that when we help people to understand the course and the path and the choices that they might have, most people will do the least invasive. Because that's what we want. We are very uncomfortable with those conversations, even today. It's 2019, and we still are very uncomfortable with those conversations. But what we know is that the majority of the people that we care for want to have that conversation. That's the other part of this is that we have to look at the person person and care values and preferences. Oh, here's another thing. Caregivers are no longer defined as just the immediate family. It is who I say is part of my space. So you're my best friend, because you're giving me eye contact, so thank you, I appreciate that. So you're my best friend, and then you've been with me through thick and thin, and good luck, because I'm not also, you know, that's my friends, right? But you're my bud. I would define you as part of this conversation, and we need to honor that. Our legal systems and the way that we have written our informed consent and the way that we've written things does not support that. That is the change that is coming. I have the ability to define who is part of my caregiver circle. I'm going to share with you, when you're having conversations with your colleagues back in your organizations, start approaching this. Remember, culture is what we say and do on a daily basis. You've got to start approaching this conversation because that is where the funding is going to go as well. How many of you are aware that there's a Caregiver Credit Act? Caregiver Credit Act is that Congress passed so that if I'm a caregiver, however defined, I actually can now take credit for my costs associated with providing care for my elderly parents or maybe my dependent child on my taxes up to a certain amount. Many people don't know that, and as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that you can bring back and look at and help those that you serve to understand the Caregiver Credit Act. If they're buying supplies, if they're providing and they're driving back and forth, all of those things now actually have the capabilities under the Caregiver Care Act to be able to be tax deductible. That's part of helping people to be able to self-manage and know that. All right, so the other thing then is we are really looking at different models. Now this is right out of CMS. I didn't make this one up. CMS just released several reports. I don't know about you, I spent a lot of time on airplanes, so that's when I had the opportunity to read them. When I was in the hospital system, I didn't have time to read it. But when you're in an airplane, you're tracked. And you can only watch, reruns of Monk and Midsummer Murders so many times, right? And so then you read CMS, and usually that makes me fall asleep. So at least I can snooze a little bit. But this is right out of CMS. So you take a look at enabling effective health care system navigation. One of the things that they're really looking at in this model is moving from what we look at as traditional into non-traditional. And what they're also looking at is that it doesn't have to be a clinician to help navigate. They're bringing in industrial engineers to look at how people can migrate themselves. Do you think retail's going to be playing in this space? Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid? Oh, let me share with you, they are already there. And so they're really looking at highly trained professional people with communication skills that help people to navigate to where they want them to go. United Healthcare, one of the top components that is looking at this model is clinical and payment structure. When they're looking at it, what they've determined is that many times clinicians actually have a bias that they bring to it. And they have enough data. United Healthcare actually has some of the best data you've ever seen. If you haven't looked at United Healthcare Foundation and the data that they have, they put out reports for across the nation. Fabulous reports, incredible reports. Take a look at it. But they have this incredible database, and what they realize and what they come to understand is that when you look at the different kinds of models, we have a bias and you have a tendency to think about that needs to be a clinician. You need to have a clinician available to be able to answer any deeper kinds of questions. But what they have found when they've looked at the data and the algorithms, it's really about communication. What do we know on the hospital side? Communication is the #1 cause for sentinel events. What do we know about navigating healthcare? It's communication. And so they're really investing in highly trained people to be able to communicate, to listen, to hear, and then to guide. And that's what these models are. And it's really looking at evolution of the initiatives to reduce avoidable hospitalizations. Who's the most high cost? Our elderly that are vulnerable. And what they have found is that if you can keep them in the lowest cost setting, identify early symptomology utilizing this kind of model, they're not coming to you. I don't know if you've analyzed and I don't know the trend here, I didn't have a chance, I apologize, I should have, but we're starting to watch some trends that are occurring across the nation where long-term care admissions have gone down. They're caring for and keeping those residents in their settings. And why is that? They're being paid for it also. But they're also being penalized too. So they're penalized just as much as you are for a readmission. They're being penalized also for remitting. It's part of their scoring system. So when you start to think about how is it that they can look at how care is being done differently, see the models are shifting? And that's where you start to look at different kinds of revenue sources, such as, oh, I don't know, point of care, lab tests being done in post-acute settings, monitoring of A1Cs in post-acute settings, no longer under the provider, but being done actually within part of the post-acute setting. Why is that? Because they want to keep blood sugars at a certain level. They know the statistics associated with blood sugars are doing this, and they're thinking about self-management, healthcare in a different frame. Now, CMS has done some pretty interesting things, and if you haven't had a chance to look at these studies, let me share with you they're torturous, but they're pretty cool, or at least to keep looking, okay? And so one of the things that they're looking at is called $1 million hearts, and that's looking at cardiovascular disease reduction that was just released in March of 2019. Why are they looking at $1 million hearts? Because heart disease is one of the leading causes of cost to us. For some of us with cardiovascular service lines, it's our bread and butter. Remember we talked about volume? Cabbages are very much lucrative at this moment under fee for service. One of the goals of $1 million hearts is that we're not doing open heart surgeries. That we're actually doing preventative to where we're not needing the highest cost. And so they're really looking at how can we do, even somebody that has heart disease, how can we help them to not necessarily do the most invasive, highest cost? Remember that conversation I had about palliative care? Palliative care is not about end of life. Palliative care is that I have a heart condition, I don't want to have my chest cracked open, here's the things I'm going to do, because I don't want to do the most invasive things. It is so counterintuitive to our healthcare model of today. That's exactly what $1 million heart is about. Looking at Medicare Advantage, I'm going to come back to Medicare Advantage because I want to share some things with you. But if you look at this report in January 2019, if there's been nothing that resonates that I've said today, write this one down. If you're not tracking what's happening with Medicare Advantage, please, I beg you do. Because we are rapidly going to the most expanded care system that Medicare can back, and that is Medicare Advantage. Remember the goals about self-management? Remember the goals of partnership? Remember the goals of healthier people, healthier communities? Hang on to that because I'm going to talk about Medicare Advantage and why that's happening there. And then behavioral health, and I touched on it a bit. I'm sharing with you, this is an innovation model. They just awarded round 2. There's some pretty cool things starting to happen and emerge around behavioral health. It is a complex issue. More so, I will tell you, on the Northwest, just because if you look at our behavioral health structures and models and what has happened here in the Northwest from it, but it is one that we're rapidly trying to get our arms around. I'd also share with you that in the elderly, we are struggling with the high cost of the utilization of medications associated with depression, dementia, and other kinds of cognitive and mental health issues associated with the elderly. CMS has it on their agenda too, and it comes under behavioral health. All right. Anybody watching Medicare Advantage? Okay, so again, it's pretty loud on airplanes, and you know, it was fascinating because here I am. I'm speaking, and I was speaking in Florida, which if you want to hang out and talk about elderly, go to Florida. Really and truthfully, because I don't know what the deal is, but there's some wild stuff happening there. I know a lot of people move there, and that's probably why, secondary to it, but here's what's also happening. The most innovative models associated with payer structure is starting to emerge coming out of places such as Florida, plus there are laws there. But Arizona too, I mean, we've got to kind of watch. And what I'm watching is that this is where we're going in payments. Medicare Advantage, probably about 4 years ago, would you guys say was probably about 15%, right? 15, 16%? What was anybody know what your Medicare Advantage payer now is? Anybody know within your systems? Nationally, it's about 28%. 28%. Here's what's happening. Medicare Advantage, so companies such as UnitedHealth, Humana, Medicare, some of the other big ones that are out there, have stepped up, and CMS says, listen, we're going to expand, we're going to give you money to expand Medicare Advantage, but we want you to look at and address social determinants of health. Remember the whole strategic goals that I was talking about? So social determinants of health actually play into it. Social determinants of health are, do you have the right food for nutritional intake? Do you have access? Do you have transportation? Do you have knowledge? Do you have access to gain knowledge? All of those things are social determinants. As a matter of fact, when I met with the legislators a couple days ago, I had more conversations about social determinants than I actually had about the bills themselves. So you're going to hear that as a big buzz coming out of Washington, D.C. Because one of the things is, remember, culture is what we say and do on a daily basis, and the leaders within CMS are saying and doing on a daily basis, taking their strategic goals and talking about social determinants, and that this is how we're going to be able to change healthcare in America. Now, Governor Leavitt said, and I really agree with him, because, you know, I am probably the most anemic political person you will ever meet in your lifetime, right? Like, if you were, I'm not going to go there, but I am anemic, so please know that. But he stood up and he said, he goes, whether you believe in Medicare for all, or whether you believe in getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, whatever it is, he said, we have to be thinking about the fact that we have to design a healthcare system that is unique for America. I have studied the health delivery systems of Canada. I have spent time actually over in the United Kingdom. I studied NHS. I had the opportunity, funny little story, I sat next to Jeremy Hunt, who at the time was the Minister of Health and was running NHS. I didn't know who he was. If you sit next to me, I'll tell you stories about growing up on a farm in Oregon. And also I'm chitter-chattering with this gentleman, and I figure out the fact that he's a bigwig. And then all of a sudden he figures out the fact that I've been a health system leader in America, and I'm being drilled. And this gentleman, you should Google him, he talks like this, and I'm being drilled. And NHS actually for them also is a major issue. It's part of the research that I've done, so we were doing this, this, and this. But one of the things that I was asking him is can you tell me your health system absolutely meets the needs of those that you serve? He said no. No. He said we have the same issues that you do. Oh, I have to tell you this wild story though. So I'm touring through this hospital, right? And it's Guy Thomas, this one that's downtown in London. And it's the height of influenza season. And as I'm walking around, they're showing me, and of course I'm a nurse, so I'm like totally in my happy place. Some of you are in your happy place when you're at the beach. I'm in my happy place when I'm in a hospital. It's just the place I was like, this is so cool, right? And then I'm looking from room to room, and I'm watching from room to room. And in each room are two different pairs of non-skid slipper socks. And finally I look at him and I say, can you explain to me why you have non-skid slipper socks, two different colors, two different pairs? I'm not understanding. And they look at me and they say, well, and I'm not going to do a British accent because I would fail miserably, right? But they say, well, this color is for when we are up and walking our patients because we want them to be ambulatory, but we don't want what is on the floor or in the hallways in the bed. So these are their slipper socks for the bed. What do you do in America? I said, well, if we can get slipper socks on, let me tell you. No, I didn't say that. I said, well, good question. We take the socks off. Right? If you were to bring back that story into our health systems, people would look at you like you're crazy. And then they'd argue about the evidence, all that. And by the way, the evidence now shows that C. diff does go into the textiles, the linens, and yes, that's how we transmit. We have that. But here was the moment. So I was invited to IT. It is the height of influenza season. Anybody ever been to high tea over in the United Kingdom? It is an open sugar cube bowl. Everybody has leaned over that sugar cube bowl. Coffee, taking cubes out. I whipped out my sugar pack so fast you wouldn't know what hit them. They were offended. Isn't it amazing how our minds think? And what we assume is normal, and we accept as normal. Because it's bias. I'm going to share with you guys, we have biases about social determinants and the impact that we have. We have biases that we bring into everything that we do every day. That's how we function, that's how we work. But I want to encourage you, and I hope that my goal is this morning is to get your minds to open up because the world is rapidly changing. And when we look at Medicare Advantage, I am having conversations with Humana. Humana is paying for meals to be delivered to people to ensure that they have the right nutrition. There are companies that are popping up all over Florida that have looked at how that they can make sure that meals are being delivered. You know, my company alone, one of the things that we're partnering up is with this company called Reunion Care. Reunion Care has designed it in such a way that they hit this, and this, bundles are sent, and everything they need to provide care in the home setting is done for them. All part of social determinants. Making it easy, making it to where people have access to the tools that they need, not thinking about the conventional way that you have to go to a DME or you have to go to a Walgreens or some other place. And Medicare Advantage is right there with it. AARP everybody has a tendency to think that AARP is for, down the road, right? You make jokes when you get your card, when you turn 50. You actually don't tell anybody that you have your card, right? All those things. I'm telling you, the tagline AARP has is aging is changing. AARP is one of the major drivers around healthcare reform. And if you're not watching what's happening with AARP, please do. If I was you, I'd be partnering with your AARP people. They now have kids. They have diabetes, welcome to diabetes kit. Somebody's diagnosed with elevated A1Cs or pre-diabetic. They now have matched up with Humana and United Care, and all of a sudden you're determined that you're pre-diabetic. That kit is sent to you from AARP. Humana's paying them. Boom. And that starts over. Your diabetic educators who give the 1 hour are now being circumvented. Why is that? Because Humana actually has outsourced and negotiated to where, come on, I don't have just 1 hour of time with a diabetic educator. I have a team that's supporting me, coaching me, helping me. What am I working on? Well, I'm working on exercising. What else am I doing? I'm working on changing my diet. I'm learning how to monitor my sugars. I'm learning what's good for me and what's not good for me. I'm taking pictures of the food I'm eating, and by the way, that app that I'm using under my Medicare Advantage plan through Humana, then we'll analyze the fact that, well, this was really cool, but you might want to put that hamburger away. And here's what you need to do. That's a whole different kind of dynamic that's out there, but that's being driven by Medicare Advantage. And the partnerships that are establishing with companies such as Humana, United Healthcare, and others. So, Governor Levitt said the big lie, value-based healthcare can be implemented solely policy. I'm really hoping that I opened your eyes up. The fact that there are so many dynamic, fluid things happening that just listening for policy changes is kind of just hanging out at the top of what's happening, and there is a huge big stream underneath what's happening. And for you to start kind of looking and keeping an eye on what's going on, especially around Medicare Advantage, because it's going to be very important when those contract negotiations come. And you start to talk about your Medicare Advantage and other kinds of contracts, and you start to see that some of the social determinants are being woven in there, that you're already ahead of it and ready to go. And then you've got partners that you can work with. You don't have to do it yourself, but know your partners. That partners that you can work with to be able to meet those needs. And then there's these guys. Now these guys think differently. I'm going to share with you, my brain does not think like theirs. Obviously, I will never be a venture capitalist in my lifetime. It is just not where my brain's at. One of the things about nurses is that we share so well. And you have brilliance at the bedside. You have nurses who have great ideas. Go back and tap into it. If you haven't done makers labs to where they can do some prototyping and designing, I would tell you, set them up and let them go. But these guys love those guys. And part of the things that you can do is broker that revenue stream with brilliance and start to look at how it is that you can be a part of this emerging and already dominant market. So there's two types of venture capitalists. There's the angel investors. I did not make that name up. That is truly what they call themselves. Don't ask me. I have no clue, no idea. I don't think they're angels either, by the way. I think it's at all. But they're individuals, which usually it's about under $1 million investment. They usually have other full-time jobs. A lot of physicians are hanging out in this space. A lot of tech. There's a lot of tech happening in this. But a lot of physicians are hanging out in this. They're usually not involved with the company. They don't look for a board seat. They don't look to be aggressive. They just want to bring this product to market. And they're looking at investment in the long term. They're called angel investors. You probably have a lot of providers, maybe physicians who are already doing this, that are already kind of dabbling and thinking about and doing. I'm watching a lot of software development happening, and so a lot on the tech side. And then there's these guys, and these are the VCs. And these guys are usually a company, and they are into big bucks. They're looking at it as a full-time job. Anytime they want a board seat, it's interesting to watch how many VCs are now starting to come on these large integrated health systems that we have. Most of the integrated health systems have two arms. If they're a faith-based not-for-profit, they'll have a for-profit arm now that's starting to come up. And you're starting to watch VCs come on those boards. And they're running that, or they're part of that kind of for-profit. And they're starting, they want to scale the existing offers, they want a large return on investment, and they will help you go public with it. And they know how to do it. Cyber health is one to watch. Cyber health is one that kind of started off over here with a couple docs trying to figure this whole thing out, and the next thing you know, they're part of VC and move in public. It is amazing to watch how much there is happening around this healthcare space. And what I've been watching is that, again, a lot of it is on the technology side. Most people, whenever I say the words Epic or Cerner, they moan, they groan, they pull their hair. You know, one woman started like, please don't say those words, you know, right? Because that's how we see it. These guys know that we're not happy with our electronic medical records that we have. We can't get the data out of it. And there's a whole lot of systems coming out and being developed because of that. Some of them are bolt-ons, some of them are replacements. And by the way, Judith Faulkner was interviewed for, who's the CEO for Epic, was interviewed about VCs, and she said that is one thing her company is looking and watching. Because these VCs are not going to take on Epic, they're going to just eat them apart. And some of you have probably some systems that you've brought in to kind of help manage or analyze and utilize the data or other things, you know, because you've had some frustrations with them. That's some of the things they're looking at. Some of these VCs, though, are saying, hey, forget the hospitals. We're going to where the money's going. Those are the ones that are really fascinating to watch. Remember the disc I told you about for asthmatics? That was funded by VC. Their projections on their return on investment, was almost 15-fold. They think they will revolutionize asthma care. They think that a doc will actually come in through the app and change medications, and you won't even be doing a physician office visit anymore. Oh, by the way, VCs also are really intrigued with nonprofits. There's a nonprofit called Project Echo. Project Echo came out of the University of New Mexico. When we think of telehealth, we think of telehealth in one way, right? I'm on one side, you're on the other, and then, but I'm in one state, you're in another state, or I'm in one city, you're in another city, and we think of it that way. Project Echo is, I am a specialist, I have knowledge, but I can only see so many people. If I do telehealth, I'll do 30 visits. Some places fund telehealth, some places do not. But Project Echo is in such a way that I have knowledge and I can train every single one of you to be able to treat, to evidence-based practice, hepatitis C, no matter where you're at. And by doing that, I then elevate the care and do not require for those that you serve in the communities that you represent setting care to have to come to me, the academic center, to see a specialist. Watch Project Echo. It's fascinating what's happening. And the nodes that are out there. And oh, by the way, Project Echo, one of the things that they're working on is behavioral health. Because they're specialists who understand management and care of behavioral health patients that then now are pushing out, and CMS is also watching it and backing it as well. These VCs are saying, this is brilliant, this is what we need to do, and they're developing those mechanisms. Almost in the same way as you look at social media, those connections that we have, that's what they're utilizing. Okay, just a quick, if I haven't brought it home to you yet, just to bring it again, this is in billions of dollars. You look at pharma, biotech, healthcare services and systems is in the kind of tealish colors, and healthcare devices and supplies. All of them shooting up. This is where VCs are putting their money, their talent, their interest from it. All right, so are you ready? Had enough? You ready to roll up your sleeves? This is a quote that I took out CEOs and I said, we need hospital and health system leaders who will roll up their sleeves and innovate around the jobs to be done today. Not leaders who will spend all their energy arguing to preserve the current system. I'm going to share with you as a chief nursing officer, I've been a system CNO, I've been a magnet CNO, I have led large hospitals, I've led small hospitals. And in the role that I'm in today, I'm going to tell you this is the time. And I know we've been saying that for a long time, but man, this is the time. We have to look at doing things differently. We have to step away from our biases. We got to question how we deliver care. And you have to be looking at your partners. And you've got to be looking beyond your brick walls. Who are the partners? Who do you know in your communities that you'd be partnering with? And they really have some unusual faces. I never, ever in my lifetime thought that I would be sitting across dinner with venture capitalists who's looking to revolutionize how delivery is done. That's the conversations. All right, I am between you and a drive out in what I think is sunny at this very moment. So I built in just a few more minutes for questions that you might have, and then let's get you on the road. Thank you very much. So Evan, you say questions, so. Questions? Okay, I sent you. Did I depress you? Yeah, a little bit. I saw your faces, you're like, oh my gosh, so much, right? Okay, tell you what, oh, wait a minute. Is there, yes.
Yes, I'm lecturer with the Health and / Nuclear Health System. I was just expecting at the very beginning when you talk about the 2050 or 40-year plan. I guess I was looking forward to you telling us what the plan was for 20 years. how we want to do the 150 year, how to do it.
Yeah, oh, if I could do that, I would be making so much more money than I make today. So, here's what I'm going to share with you. You've got to read the tea leaves. And the tea leaves that CMS is giving us a strategic plan. It's going to be messy. It already is messy. And you've got to be willing to do risk. And that's the one thing that I'm going to share. Health systems, many are risk avoidant. They really are. And so as you're starting to look at your revenue, and the conversation that you may need to have is how much revenue are you going to keep in your volume-based budgeting system? And then where do you start carving up that revenue to where you can start doing some little transformation? And that's where you're going to have to do some risk. Remember when I talked to you about partners? These VCs are really interested in getting into health systems. They want to study you. They want to be you. Don't be afraid to talk to some of these guys. They think differently, though. I'm just going to tell you, they think differently. But if you have intellectual property, you have revenue streams as part of the healthcare delivery system that you can tap into that you don't even realize that you have, because we just do what we do. That's where you have to look at things in a new lens. Medicare Advantage, I don't know how many of you don't raise your hands, but if you're part of those contract negotiations, you better be looking at where they're going with social determinants. I would already start to look at, when we talk about social determinants, we have a tendency to put it into a box, and they're not moving it into a box anymore. When I saw how many startup companies there are in ensuring that people are getting food, I was amazed, absolutely amazed. And they were getting into contract negotiations, or they were getting into contracts with the Humana Medicare Advantage dollars. Because what Medicare is doing is, you got this much money, keep it. But do what you need to do. We don't want to see them in the hospital. And they are doing some pretty incredible things. I've been looking at that now, really and truthfully, and start planning. You do a community needs assessment. Nonprofits have to do a community needs assessment. Most of the time, it's done through your foundation office or your mission office or whatever you have. How many of you have really analyzed those community needs assessments? Look for the pearls that are in there about what's happening in your communities. Start to address and think about, really and truthfully, what social determinants. And if you're not comfortable with social determinants, read about it. Health Affairs Today is one of your best revenue, or not revenue, but sources around social determinants. And really getting yourself comfortable, because what you have in your community, we live just outside of Chicago, and so, but what is on in downtown Chicago on the south side is very different in the space that I live in. And so you have to be looking at that, and then you have to be starting to design really and truthfully how you're going to be able to be the keeper of those lives, because that's where the fight is. And if I'm Mayo, I'm after them, right? And so I'm going to be doing negotiations and what I can do to keep the costs down, but if for some reason or another I have to have that hit, I'm coming that way and I'm skipping over you. So that's all part of that you have to be looking at and really being a part of it. Do I have a roadmap for you? No. If I did, I would be making so much money. But I would tell you, you have to be really and truthfully looking ahead. And man, you've got to put some money over here that you're willing to risk. Because some stuff's going to fail. Some stuff isn't. And then you've got to look at partners beyond what you've ever thought about and looked at and around your partnerships. How many of you have ever met with your Walgreens in your communities? I would encourage you that you start having conversations with them. I know they're taking up and they're doing the urgent care clinics. But one of the things that you can be doing is, let me just throw this idea out to you. If you want to think about self-management and the lives that you care for, have you ever thought about the fact that you have diabetic information that's right there on the shelves of Walgreens that shows your brand that absolutely partners with them? Have you thought about color coding, maybe with your local grocery store? Foods and diabetics. Green is fabulous. Yellow, not so hot. Please don't touch the Swedish fish. Those are red, right? It's those kinds of conversations that you've got to be looking at that you can use in power to negotiate your contracts Medicare Advantage. If you're showing what you're already doing, man, think of the ability that you're gonna have. So those are some ideas that I can tell you, but you've got to be playing very differently than, yes, we'll reduce our price by 1%. Because you can't do it anymore, really and truthfully. Your clinical leadership, this is a tough space to be in, but nursing has to be looking beyond the walls. Nursing has to be looking at how they, and I'm not talking telehealth, I am talking about the fact that nursing is moving, whether it's virtually with those, the lives that you serve in such ways that they're coaching and supporting, but also, do you have people who are fabulous at communication that are not nurses who are doing touch points with them as well? That's the other part. That technology is going to come in, and you've got to think about that space. And are training people who are very versatile and how they're moving throughout. Remember, navigation of the health system just isn't a hospital level. So, okay, other questions? All right, thank you guys so much. You've been fabulous.